I'm going to be, over the next few minutes, sharing some ideas and some principles with you. The principles I'm about to share with you have been acquired over a course of a few years. I come from very humble beginnings, and I was lucky. And some people talk about luck from the point of view of falling on what I might call good fortune, meaning I found someone who was kind enough to have documented and shared some of the ideas that created remarkable changes in their lives. And as I studied them, I realized that I was able to replicate some of the successes that they achieved. And what I want to do with you over the next few minutes is share some of the ideas that I've learned and that I have applied. I'm not going to be teaching from a point of view of theory. I'm going to be talking about what I've applied and what I've seen create results. I'm going to be talking about wealth, but I'm going to be doing this as part of a series. We're going to start from what I consider to be the foundation to creating success and wealth. I come from an engineering background, designing buildings and constructing buildings. And prior to retiring from engineering, I had done and worked in so many great buildings. And if you were to speak to any great contractor, if you were to speak to any good engineer or architect, one of the things they say to you is that the foundation of the building is the most important part of the entire structure. Now, I found that many people begin to create a successful future, a financial future, but they're building on a weak foundation. There's an ancient story that talks about two men. One of them built his house on the sand. The second man is referred to as being wise. He built his house on the rocks. Now, the account of the story says that when the winds came and when the water and the tides and the waves came, unfortunately, the house that was built on the sand collapsed, but the house built on the rock withstood all of the external pressure. What I want to start with is the foundation, because the foundation is the basic part of constructing a great building. Now, what is wealth? Now, I found from my experience that when we talk about wealth, we have various pictures that come to our mind. For some of us, it's simply the beautiful cars and the beautiful homes and the luxury lifestyle. And that's okay. For some others, it's simply the abundant life. It's having love, it's having joy, having peace, having loved ones around and living in gratitude. And that's okay. For some others, it's simply the experience of knowing what it would feel like to be wealthy and be a billionaire or a millionaire. Now, I found that wealth is very subjective, just like the word success. And individually, we have to define wealth based on who we are and what we want from life. So for many people, I've found there's a similarity or commonality in the word wealth. When we hear wealth, we think about a bank account with, so many zeros and a few commas. Or we think about a financial statement, a statement with so many assets. And so in other words, we're thinking about wealth in terms of money. Now, that definition alone is not incorrect. It's simply incomplete. Wealth is much more holistic than material wealth. And that's what we've got to start with. I'm going to be sharing with you 3 levels of wealth. If you understand the 3 levels of wealth, I think you can have a remarkable life, because a lot of the principles are applicable to any area of life: success, good health, happiness, wealth, prosperity, good fortune, abundance, and love. The principles of life are based on universal laws of the universe. Now, ignorance to the laws does not erase the existence of the laws. For example, law of gravity exists. Now, whether you believe in gravity or you don't, doesn't negate the existence of the law. Now, My responsibility and your responsibility during our journey through life is to discover the laws and learn how to use the laws to create the result we want. Now, I'm going to start by saying this. Life is measured in time. Life is measured in time. Health is measured in time. And therefore, wealth has to be measured in time. And the reason for that is because health is derived from life, and wealth is also derived from life. However, in measuring wealth as a function of time, we have to use money. And this is when we're talking about material wealth. That'll be my focus. Material wealth, which is one level of wealth. Now, some people say that the value of something is determined by what someone else is willing to pay for it. That kind of makes sense. In 2016, the Oppenheimer diamond, the blue diamonds, was sold in Geneva for about £40 million, approximately. The reason? They're only about 0.00001% of that piece of diamond in the entire world. In other words, it's about 1 in a million. And so someone perceived that piece of jewel to be worth 40 million. But in addition to that, it was because it was rare. So I came to a simple conclusion that the value of something is determined by what you're willing to pay for it. But more importantly, is determined by its rarity. Now, my question to you is, what is your value? Now, I've asked this question to so many people, and whenever I ask the question, are you wealthy? Very few people say yes. And I'm stunned by the response. And so I usually say to them, do you realize that there are 7 billion people in the world today? Now, as I speak to you right now, there are 7 billion people in the world. And although there are 7 billion people in the world today, none of us is like you. Now, I find that to be very fascinating, but also very intriguing. Now, that tells me that you are unique. You were born for a reason. You were born special. You were born for a purpose. Now, we've had 107 billion people who have lived and who are no longer living. And after I'm gone, and after you're gone, after we've completed our journey in this beautiful life, we'll have more people who come this way. Now, that could go as much as trillions of people. But interestingly, none of them, both those who have been and those who are yet to come, will be like you. Now, that tells me, as I stand here today, right now, you're 1 in 7 billion. Now, if that doesn't make you feel rare, that worries me. You see, you're unique, uniquely made, uniquely born, given gifts, skills, talents, and abilities that far exceed anything you could potentially think about. That tells me that you're wealthy. You have the potential to be wealthy, but you have to choose to be wealthy. A lot of times when I speak to people, what I find, and I did this for so long, I find that most people are worried about what they don't have. We tend to think about external things, so we say we don't have enough resources, or there's something I need. And I want to say to you, it's not what you don't have that is the problem. It's not even what you think you need that is the problem. It's a lack of resourcefulness. It's your failure to recognize what's in you. You see, everything that you need to become the best person you can be is in you already. You simply have to go within, find out what that is, and make the right decisions, and use the gifts that have been given to you to achieve your dreams and goals. Now, what are these resources that have been given to you? Let me share some of what I think are the most important parts of you. You've been given a brain, with 1 billion cells. You have a mind that is called the greatest power in the world. With the mind, you can create any future you want, and with that mind, you can live into that future. You've been given a heart to help you regulate your decisions, a heart to guide some of the thoughts you might think about and help you create emotions that make those thoughts habitual. Help those thoughts go into what we call your subconscious mind, and then help you start to become that person you dream about. You have a body, a unique body second to none, a body that science is still trying to understand. And every day they come up with something even more magnificent about your body. That body is there to allow you to dream the dreams, your heart to produce the emotions, and your body to help you achieve those dreams. But it doesn't even stop there. We've had about 7,000 years of recorded history. And in that period, we've had great minds, people who have lived and who have achieved a level of success that far exceeds what few of us could attain alone. And so we have examples we can use. We can use their life experiences as what I would call a writing pad to sculpture our future. But in addition to that, in the 7,000 years of recorded history, we also have people who have failed. And these are also documented, meaning that all we have to do to avoid failing in life is try not to repeat what the failures are doing every day. It's really that simple. As a matter of fact, if you simply disciplined yourself not to do what the failures are doing, you automatically put yourself above average. Now, if you want to take yourself into the top 3%, top 5%, then all you have to do is replicate the success by the successful. Now, it doesn't stop there, because also we have people alive today who we can use as role models. Now, in addition to all of these great qualities you have, you've also been endowed with what I call the power of choice. The power to choose how this story ends. Now, you can spend a lot of your energy and your time looking back at the past, or you can simply make a decision that from today, you'll make the right choices, make the right decisions to lead you and guide you into the future that you want. The power of choice is the gift we have that separates you and I from all of the life forms. You don't have to live the next 5 years like you did the last 5 years, only by choice. You don't have to live today like you did yesterday, only by choice. You can choose. You see, you're not a puppet on strings, someone pulling you around. There is no capricious God in the sky who is, pulling the strings and we have to dance to his beats. That doesn't exist. In addition to that, you're not a tree. You don't have to stay stuck in a position of life. You can dream, you can create, you can design, you can take a leap of faith, you can act by choice, but you have to exercise that power of choice. Now, to summarize everything that you have already, you have a potential. That potential is unlimited. I find it very difficult to explain what unlimited potentiality means. In my best definition, it simply means it has no beginning and it has no end. Now, that is difficult for you and I to understand, because everything we've experienced in life has a beginning and has an end. But unlimited potentiality simply means that you can be whoever you want to be. You can do whatever you want to do. You can have whatever you want to have. Now, why have I spent some time talking about all of these resources? One simple answer. It's not without, it's all within. Everyone is trying to get something on the outside to complete them on the inside. But everything you need to become your best self is all within. An ancient writer says, go into the closet and shut the door and think. Because when you shut the door in that still state of mind, what you find is you start to listen to that still small voice within you that is always speaking to you. The problem is, there's so much noise and distractions everywhere, we can't hear the voice. You have all the resources you need to be wealthy. Now, I'm going to move very quickly. I'm going to move fast as I go through some ideas about wealth. I may not be able to cover everything in one session, but like I said at the start, this is a series. Every day, roughly about the same time, I'm going to deliver a part of the series. I can make you a promise. The ideas will be constructive. The ideas are guaranteed to create great results. Now let's begin with wealth in terms of defining wealth. There are 3 levels of wealth. 3 levels. You've got to understand this. At the highest level of wealth is spiritual wealth. I'm going to use a board to make this a little bit more understandable, so bear with me. If you can't see my handwriting, then I'll try and make it better next time. But for now, you're just going to have to make do with what I write. At the highest level of wealth, so there are 3 levels of wealth. Spiritual wealth is the highest level of wealth. Beneath the spiritual level of wealth is what we call mental wealth. Underneath the mental level of wealth is what we call physical wealth. Now you've got to understand these 3 levels of wealth, and the reason is simply because the 3 levels of wealth are connected. However, they also operate independently. Now at the spiritual level of wealth is the understanding that I am wealth. Wealth is not something external to me. I am. Now those 2 words, I am, are powerful. I'm not going to talk about it in this session, but I think it's worth studying. You know, when people say, I don't feel well, or I'm sick, or I'm sad, I usually say to them, you better choose your words carefully, because whenever you use the word I am, it's a powerful word. In a way, you're speaking the future on yourself. So you should only use the word I am, but also you should only choose your words carefully. Only say things you want in your life. You say, I am beautiful, I am whole, I am rich, I am wealthy, I'm happy. Always use words that are positive and words that edify who you are. Wealth is expressed at the highest level as spiritual wealth, meaning you express your true nature. Now, how do you get into that spiritual level of wealth? Very simple. The first is through what we call love. We call it love energy. The ancient writer says, you should love others as you love yourself. When you've discovered true self-love, you're wealthy. When you express that love to other people, you're wealthy. And the first sign of pure love is the desire to give. And that is the reason why next to love is benevolence. The willingness to give, to share, to create value for people, to live a life of significance. By doing that, you're expressing love. Now, I'm not talking about the intimacy type love. You know, it's easy to love someone in your family. It's easy to love someone you're intimate with. The question is, the beggar down the high street, the person who has been obnoxious to you on the streets, the person who perhaps hasn't been nice to you, your boss, in your heart, do you really love them? Now, when you express true love, that is wealth. Now, there are a few other ways through which you can experience that spiritual level of wealth. This is number 2, gratitude. It's a way of expressing wealth. Now, you've heard people say gratitude is the key to wealth. You see, when you're grateful, you can't be fearful. When you're grateful, you can't be unhappy. When you're grateful, you can't be sad. When you're grateful, you can't be really hating on someone else, because gratitude draws you closer to the source Now think about this. A tree planted close to a bank of water has a better chance of drawing water and grow into its best form. If that same tree is put very far from water, maybe towards a desert, it withers. It doesn't grow as beautifully as it should. Now obviously that all depends on the type of tree. Gratitude draws us closer to our original source. And the closer we come to our source, the more we get close to what we call infinite intelligence, infinite energy. Doesn't matter what you want to call it, but that completes who we are. Some people call it God. Some people call it by a different name, Allah. Doesn't really matter. You get to choose. But the more grateful we are, the more we get closer to our real nature. The second level of wealth is mental wealth. And this level is somewhat experienced in the mind. See, whatever you can create in your mind, whatever you can conceive in your heart, in your mind, and you believe it, you can achieve it. Now, the ancient Greeks said the heart, and they refer to the heart as the mind. Whatever you can conceive in your mind, and you believe it with conviction and expectation, you can achieve it if you're willing to work towards it. Do me a favor now. Just, can you look around, do a 180 turn around where you are, and look around and see all the tangible objects around you. Everything you see was created first in someone's mind. The wristwatch I'm wearing began as an idea in someone's mind. This idea was developed. The more the individual thought about the idea, the more they started looking for ways to make it a reality. That's how they converted this idea into what we would call a theory. That theory, through application, through study, through understanding, was developed into what we call a fact. And then from a fact, we developed that in more detail into what we now have today as a wristwatch. But it all began in someone's mind. So if you want to experience wealth at the mid-level or the second level, you've got to have the ability to dream. You've got to have the ability to dream, to create. I'm going to use a word, the F word, fantasize. You've got to have the ability to fantasize. Because the more you can create in your imagination, the more you can achieve in your reality. It's really simple. You know, one of the most powerful gifts we have is the power of the mind. Now, I'm going to digress a little bit because this is where most people, I found, struggle. And this is where I struggled for a long time. Every one of us has 5 senses: sight, sound, touch, taste, smell. You understand the 5 senses. The reason you understand the 5 senses is simply because you were taught at a young age how to use your 5 senses. In school, if you went to formal education, they taught you how to read and write. They taught you about words, and so you developed your 5 senses. You can walk into a room and say, the odor here doesn't smell good. The same way you can walk into another space and say the fragrance is refreshing, because you've developed those sensory faculties. Unfortunately, we weren't trained or taught about what we call the higher faculties. The higher faculties is imagination, will, perception, intuition, reason, and memory. We weren't trained. As a matter of fact, I remember growing up, and in the environment I grew up in, if you fantasized, people said you had to wake up. As a matter of fact, a young child begins to dream and he says to his friends and his father and his mother, I'm going to become the president. And they say, well, we're poor. You've got to stop dreaming. The child at that young age is exercising their higher faculties. Now, when the child starts to hear such words as you're not going to amount to nothing, or you can't do that, or we're poor, it's never going to happen, unfortunately, they stop using their dream machine. And so they start relying simply on the 5 senses. Now, all greatness is achieved by using your 5 senses. If you want to achieve greatness in life, if you want to be successful, you must learn to use your five senses. Your imagination. It was Walt Disney who had a picture in his mind of what he called a park where people could come with families and they could have fun. We call it Disneyland today. The day Disneyland was opened, sadly Walt wasn't present. And a reporter said to Walt's wife, she said, it's a shame Walt wasn't here to see this beautiful paradise. And his wife waited, and she wasted no time in saying to the reporter, oh, Walt saw all of this long before all of us. He saw it in his imagination, and he believed in that dream. And today we have millions of people fly all the way to Florida just to go down to Disneyland. If you want to achieve success, if you want to be great, you have to use your higher faculties. The reason I'm emphasizing this is because everything you're going to create on the physical level begins with the use of the mind. It begins with the use of your higher faculties. I'm not going to talk about the higher faculties in this session. Sometimes I get really excited talking about it. I forget the original theme that I'm meant to be focused on. But I might do something as a separate session so you can understand the power of what you have as a gift. Everything begins in the use of your higher faculties. I believe, in my opinion, your five senses is a gift, it's an asset, but it's also a liability. I think it's a blessing and a curse. You know, some people have now conditioned themselves that unless they see it, they don't believe it. And I say, you can't do that. We walk by vision. We walk by faith, not by sight. You see, when you see with your eyes, we call that sight. When you see with your mind, when you see through your imagination, we call that vision. The people who change the world are the people who see with their vision, and they don't get limited by what they see with their eyes. As a matter of fact, they change circumstances until what they see through their eyes is the same as what they once saw in their vision. Now, I'm going to move away from there as I come back to what I'm talking about. If you want to experience wealth at the mental level, you've got to dream. You've got to create a picture in your mind. Because if you want to be wealthy, it begins in your mind. Create a picture of the ideal person you want to be. Describe that person. Formulate mental pictures, mental movies, and every day replay those pictures. And what you find is that the more you create those pictures and the more you emotionally get involved with those pictures by connecting feelings to those pictures, the more you live in the feeling of the wish fulfilled, the more your actions will begin to change. You'll find that you start acting like a different person, and your action will create different results. So if you want to change the results in your life, take a step back. Change the picture you see first, and the results will change. Now, the lowest level of wealth is the physical level of wealth. And there are various parts to this physical level of wealth. There is what we call health. Now, you've heard people say health is wealth, and that is very true. You see, if this body you're in is in bad health, unfortunately, the mind can't create the best pictures. The brain cannot take the instructions from the mind, and what you find is that you're stuck. Your body is a temple. Some say treat your body like a temple. In other words, take good care of it. So on the physical level, we have health, but also on the physical level, we have material wealth. On the physical level, there are laws. There are laws that you must obey. Success is simply the obedience to principles and laws of life, the application. And the laws of the universe are precise, they are perfect, and they guarantee the promise. Now, in looking at physical wealth in relation to material wealth, in this instance, I'll say this. You can be spiritually wealthy. In other words, you have love, you have happiness, you have joy, you have gratitude, you have positive attitude. But you could be financially poor. You could also be financially and materially wealthy, but you're unhappy. And the reason is simply because money is not meant to make you happy. Money is simply a reward, a reaction to something you do, i.e., obeying the laws. You must understand that the three levels of wealth complete the equation. So, on the physical level, what we're talking about here are laws of wealth, laws of money. They are beliefs, they are rules, they are principles of creating wealth. If you don't understand these laws and principles and beliefs and philosophies and psychology and strategies, you will stay stuck. Now, you can meditate as long as you want. You can create the pictures as long as you want, but you won't see it. Think about this. By thoughts, what you want is created at that level. By thought, what you want is created. By feeling and expectation, it's sent to you. But you only receive it by action, by applying the laws and the principles of wealth. So, for example, if you want to be healthy, you've got to exercise. You've got to eat well. That is a law. If you spend more time eating than you spend exercising, and if you eat much more than you burn, it's the law of cause and effect. It always works. It means you will simply retain more. On the other hand, if you burn more calories than you consume, then the law still applies. You probably look leaner. If you want to achieve material wealth, you must discipline yourself to study the laws of wealth. Now, I've said all of this to just simply explain the three levels of wealth. Now, how does this apply to you? You might be thinking, I don't really know how this applies to me. Now, let me bring you in for a great landing, especially in this part of this session. I learned something quite interesting that I want to share with you. I found that a number of years ago, I had created a dream of who I wanted to be. I had a picture of the future that I wanted. I had arrived in London, England with a dream. I had passion, I had this burning desire. I had a picture in my mind of this future. But after a number of years, I found that I was failing. And I was failing miserably, but I didn't know why. And so I went on a course of study. I started to try to study myself. You see, I was born and I was raised in West Africa. And the country that I was raised in, obviously there was a lot of corruption. And I grew up with this philosophy or this belief that it was the government, it was the leaders, that it was the businesses, everyone was corrupt. I found 1,001 reasons why I wasn't doing well. And I found that the more I transferred the responsibility to other people, the more I stayed stuck. The more I became enslaved to poverty. And it wasn't until I decided that it wasn't the government, it wasn't the weather, it wasn't the economy, it wasn't destiny, it wasn't bad luck, it wasn't faith, that it was me. It was only when I made that decision that I started to see the light. And that's what I want to encourage you to do. Recognize that in all areas of your life, if there is something you want that you don't have right now, it has nothing to do with something outside. It has everything to do with you. And I made a decision that I was going to study myself. And the more I studied successful people to learn what they were doing differently and how they were achieving success, And the more I studied myself, the more I realized that the results that I was creating was simply a reflection of my thinking, my beliefs, my philosophy, and my actions. And the more I studied myself, the more I came to the realization that there were three parts of who I am. Now, to understand the three levels of wealth, you need to listen very carefully to the next 2-3 minutes because it's powerful. I realized that if this is a representation of who I am, I realized that I have three parts of my personality. Now, it's described in various ways. Some people say it's a trinity. The way you have water in three states, you can have water in solid, you can have water in liquid, you can have water in what we call vapor. There are three parts of who I am. You look at me now and you say, well, that's Mensah. Well, Mensah is my name. This is my body, but I am not my body. I am a spirit. So the first part of my personality is I am a spirit. Now, I'm not dealing with religion here now, so stay with me. Don't get excited. Don't switch off. I'm a spirit. I live in a body. So, I have a physical part to myself. But I have a mind. Now, I've talked about the mind already, and you know you have a mind. Now, some people say you have a soul. Some people say you have an intellect. Now, I don't really care what you choose to call it. All I know for sure is that I do have a mind. And if I want to experience true wealth, I have to experience wealth at the three levels. So, the three levels of wealth correspond with the three levels of my personality. The question you should ask yourself is simply, am I living in the three levels of wealth? Now, why am I explaining this part of your personality? One simple reason. Everything in life comes in parts. Now, you wouldn't understand the beauty of light if you didn't have darkness. The same way you wouldn't know the joy of winning except you knew intellectually, even if you didn't know emotionally, you knew intellectually what it would mean to lose. Sound is incomplete without your ability to hear. You know, pictures are incomplete without your ability to see them. Everything in life comes in parts. The same thing applies to success. If you alter the equation of success, you alter the outcomes. Also, if you alter the equation of wealth, you alter the outcomes. You give me a glass of water, I use this example, and we call it water. In science, they might call it H2O, meaning it's a compound. 2 parts of hydrogen mixed with 1 part of oxygen creates a compound. We call it water. That compound is colorless, it's odorless. If I drink it, it will nourish me. On the other hand, if I decided that some reason I wasn't too satisfied with the composition of the compounds and I decided to alter the equation, change the parts a little bit. If I mix 2 parts of hydrogen with 2 parts of oxygen, then what I've done is I've created a different compound. We call it H2O2. In other words, we call it hydrogen peroxide. Now it's still odorless, it's colorless, but if I drink it, it would kill me. The point I'm making with that example is simply, if you alter the component parts of the wealth equation, you have an incomplete equation. Just like if you alter the component parts of success, you have an incomplete equation. I'm going to be focusing over the next few sessions first on the lowest level of wealth, material wealth that leads to financial freedom and financial wealth. But I want to stress, it will not make you happy. The reason is because money is not there to make you happy. That's not the purpose of money. So I'm going to be dealing with just one part of the equation, and I say that simply because my hope for anyone listening would be, if you really want to experience true wealth, you have to begin with spiritual wealth. Then come down to mental wealth, and then let it be manifested in the physical form through good health and through material means. When you have all these three, we call it prosperity. And the equation is now complete. Now, I hope that's been useful. That somehow sets the foundation to what we're going to be talking about in the next few sessions. Now, I'm going to draw this to a close now, because now we've set the foundation. We know very well what I'm going to be talking about next. Material wealth that leads to financial freedom. And what you find is, as I teach you in the next session and the next series, what you find is that the ideas I share with you will become easy to apply, and you'll be able to create the future that you want. I think I have about 10 minutes or 15 minutes left, and so what I want to do is begin that process of talking about wealth. And when we talk about wealth, like I said before, most people have a picture. I'm talking about wealth now in terms of financial freedom. And this is financial wealth. How do you achieve it? How do you begin the journey? It's very simple. It's very simple. It won't be easy, but it's simple. Wealth, like I explained earlier on, is measured in time. Money as a function of time. And the best way is to draw my definition together with Buckminster Fuller's definition. Buckminster Fuller defined wealth as your ability to live so far into the future without having to work. So my definition is simply that wealth is not about money alone. In my opinion, it's really about cash flow, income, but income from investments. Now, financial freedom is arriving at a place whereby the income you have from your investments, assets, the income you have from your businesses is sufficient to allow you maintain your chosen lifestyle without you having to work for necessity. But maybe you might choose to work. In this case, it could be for fun, for happiness, for joy, for pleasure, for fulfillment, for significance. But now you're working not because you have to, but because you want to. So financial freedom simply is a way of measuring your level of wealth. Wealth is simply arriving at that place whereby you have more income coming in from investments that do not require the investment of your time. In other words, it's not a job. It means whether you work or you don't work, money comes in. Now, I found in my journey that there was a simple process of getting to that place. For so many years, I applied the principle. Now, I'm going to share some things with you as I go through. What you find is some of the things that I say contradicts what you know. I came from Africa to London, England, so many years ago. I had never left the country before. I never left my continent before. But also I had this belief about wealthy people, because in my country there was a lot of corruption, obviously, and a lot of the wealthy people, not all of them, a lot of them, majority of them, had earned their wealth in a way that perhaps I thought wasn't right. Upon arrival in London, England, I found that I came over with my beliefs, and that limited me. And for so many years, I would hear wealth philosophies, and I would hear success principles. I would hear about great strategies. And every time I heard something great, I would ask myself one question. Is this consistent with what I know? Is this consistent with my beliefs? And if the answer was no, I rejected the idea. And that's very sad, Now, for some of you listening right now, you're going through the same experience that I experienced so many years ago. A lot of what I'm sharing with you, you're saying this is not consistent with what I know. For so many years, I stayed in lack and I became poorer. And I realized that it was because I had limited myself in one way of thinking. Now, I started today's session talking about your higher faculties. One of those faculties is perception. Perception is simply the way you see things. I'm reminded by a story of two men standing in a prison cell. One of the men looks out through the window and all he can see are the iron bars that are keeping him in that cell. The second man looks out of the same window. What he sees is a beautiful sunset. What is different? What was different? Perception, perspective. One person sees a glass and says the glass is half empty. The other person says it's half full. Perspective, perception. For so many years, people said the world was flat, and then if you walked to the end of the wall, it would fall out. And some great adventurers said, we want to take on that challenge because we don't think it's true. And today, we've discovered that the world is not flat, it's in fact round. What changed? Well, they had a different perception about life and about the world, and they were willing to take a leap of faith. And today, we have a better world today because we changed our perspective. A lot of what I'm trying to say is this: until you start to change your perspective and ask yourself a simple question, what if I'm wrong? What you find is that you might remain in lack. I did that for so many years. And it wasn't until I started asking one simple question, and this is what I want you to ask yourself as you listen. The question I asked myself was, could this information, could this new principle or strategy or idea, can it help me achieve my goals? You see, I had used my own beliefs, principles, philosophies for so long, and the results I was creating wasn't good enough. So it was easy for me to get to a point and say, listen, my way has not created the results that I want. So I can see these people creating great results and they're using different principles and they say it works. So, what's the harm in trying? Here's the point I'm trying to make. A lot of what I'm going to share, you're going to find it to be very, very contradictory in some areas to what you know. Don't ask yourself if it's consistent with what you know. Ask yourself a simple question. Can it help me achieve my goals? Now, for so many years, there's a principle that I followed, and I'm going to give you a formula. A formula for poverty and a formula for wealth. Now, every coin has three sides. You have what we call the head, you have what we call the tail. I stood on one side and all I could see for a long time was one side of the coin. That side of the coin is poverty, the other side of the coin is wealth. The difference is, Scott F. Gerald said that the sign of first-rate intelligence is the ability to hold two opposing ideas in the mind at the same time and still retain the ability to function. In other words, you've got to stand on the edge, because when you're on the edge, you can look this way and you can look that way, and then you can decide what's best for you. Now, for so many years, I applied a formula which was, I would earn, the first thing I would do would be spend. And when I was done spending, I would save. The problem with this formula was I didn't have a good understanding about money. I thought money was there to be spent. As a matter of fact, a lot of my beliefs growing up, having come from a very poor background, was that money was the root of all evil. So subconsciously, I was self-sabotaging myself. So whenever I got money, I had to spend it. I had to get rid of it. After all, money was the root of evil. So I didn't want any evil around me. Meaning, I spent more than I earned. So after spending, I had very little to save. Unfortunately, that meant I had to save actively even when I had a little left. This kept me poor. This is one side of the equation. The second part of the equation is the wealth formula. The wealth formula is simply, when you earn, the first thing you must do is invest. When you're done investing, then you can spend. You see, many people think they have to earn more to create wealth. No, it's not what you earn. It's what you do with what you earn. Now, these two sides of the coin and the separation between the poor and the wealthy is very simple. Bring me a poor person, bring me a wealthy person, I'll tell you one word. That word is habits. Habits make people poor, and habits make people wealthy. Now, if the earning is the same, and if it has little to do with what you earn, then we have to ask the question, what is the next step? The poor, like I did for so many years, was I saved. The wealthy invest. So it's what you do first. Now, one is investing, the other is spending. Once the wealthy are done investing, now they can spend. But guess what? They spend with a budget in mind. And that is a word most people don't like. There's a reason. There's nothing wrong with this word. Shakespeare said, there's nothing good or bad, but your thinking makes it so. By spending with a budget in mind, they create what we call a surplus. This surplus means a little bit of a saving, but the difference between the wealthy and the poor is that the wealthy save passively with the intention of reinvesting. By passively, I mean they have a purpose, they have a timeline, and they have an intent. I believe if you're saving for more than 12 months, that is active saving. Now, in my old days, I had to save actively because I had very little saved. The problem with saving is if you save money, you increase your wealth incrementally. If you invest, you increase your wealth exponentially. And the reason is simply because by investing, you use a principle that Albert Einstein called the eighth wonder of the world. And that is a principle called compound interest. You compound, and that multiplies what you earn. Now I'm going to show you in the next few minutes why it has nothing to do with what you earn. Because some may be thinking it has everything to do with what you earn. No, it doesn't. Because if you have a bad habit like I did for a long time of spending everything you earn and more and living on credit, then you have nothing to invest. So it has more to do with the discipline, the habits, the lifestyle of investing. And here is my view. If you want to be wealthy, you must become a compulsive investor. It's not a matter of choice, it's a must. This approach follows a principle that the ancient Babylonians called pay yourself first. The ancient Babylonians said a portion of what you earn, a part of what you earn, is yours to keep. Before you pay everyone else, pay a fraction to yourself. Invest it for the future. Now, every farmer understands this concept. A farmer at the end of a harvesting period cannot consume all of the harvest, because if he or she does, there's no seed for the next season. So they must take a portion of what they have and set it aside as seed corn for the next season. And that is the simple principle. Take a portion of what you have, set it aside for the next season. Doing it that way means you create more. Now, the key here is when you now create a harvest, you reinvest everything again. And that's how the compounding principle works. You put a capital investment, it creates some interest, some income. You reinvest the capital together with what you've generated in terms of profit. And by continuously doing that, what you then create is not just a golden goose. You now have a little bit of a golden geese that keep producing more eggs, and eventually you become wealthy. Now, that sets somehow the scene for wealth. And what I'm going to do in the next session is show you how anyone can begin the journey. I'll say something to you just before we conclude. The principle of wealth comes down to a statement. Discipline yourself to live on less than you earn. Live within your means. Expand the means, but always stay within the means. Because if you live beyond your means, you can't invest. And if you can't invest, you can't be wealthy. And if you're not wealthy, then you're limiting the experience that you could have from life. Now, I believe every one of us was born to live the extraordinary life. That is life on your terms. Doing what you want to do, with who you want to do it with, when and how. But to experience that, what you need is freedom. And in freedom, I'm talking about time and money freedom. Because once you have both, then you can sit down and ask yourself the question, how do I really want to live? What do I really enjoy doing? I believe if you take away the money burden from a lot of people's lives, you find that they change. Because they now start to live that true life that they were born to live. Now, I hope so far it's been useful. We've laid the foundation of wealth. In the next session, in the next series, I'm now going to take you step by step on how you can start from where you are and you can get to your chosen destination. Like I said, it has nothing to do, has less rather to do with what you earn. It has more to do with your habits, your lifestyle. Now, obviously, I want you to earn more, but I'm going to teach you in the next few series why you have to learn about income, because not all sources of income are the same. So some people say, yeah, you just need to make more money. Well, not really. If you're making the money from the wrong source, then it's like driving a car with the handbrakes on. There are various forms of income. All income sources are not the same. The wealthy understand the right income source, and so what they do is they use that to their advantage. And as a result of that, they get wealthier. Now, if you're thinking about getting wealthy by working hard for money, what you find is that you stay poor. Reason is simple. There's a finite amount of time in a day. So as you invest your time, you're still working for money. The key to wealth is to have money work for you. Because if you work for money, you're the slave. Money is the master. If you reverse the roles, money becomes the slave, you become the master. So now, money works for you. And money works for you creating the right type of income, because the right income is what creates multiplication of wealth. Now, that's all I'm going to talk about today. I hope it's been useful. I hope you found something worth sitting in for. If you have any questions, by all means, drop it down. In the next session tomorrow, I'm going to go a little bit deeper. We've set the foundation now. From tomorrow, we're now going to go into, okay, how do we begin that journey? And what you find is that by the end of this session and series, you'll find that your life never goes back to what it is today. I believe that today will be the poorest you've ever been. I can see wealth, I can see abundance, I can see joy and happiness in the future for you. You've got to believe it. And I wish you the best. God bless.